Can you feel it when someone is staring at the back of your head? You know the feeling. Something tickles the back of your neck, you turn around, and there they are looking right at you. How did you know? It does feel like a sixth sense, doesn't it? So, can you actually feel someone's eyes on you, or is something else going on? Most people think they can feel it. It even has a name, scopaesthesia, or better known as the psychic staring effect. And it's not just a campfire belief. Its most determined champion is a Cambridge-trained biologist named Rupert Sheldrake. Across the 1990s and 2000s, he ran years of experiments arguing the sense of being stared at is completely real and laid the whole case out in a 2003 book. His test was simple. You sit with your back to someone. Round by round, a random list tells them whether to stare at the back of your head or look away and think of nothing. And you just guess, watched or not. He ran it more than 100,000 times. People guessed right about 57% of the time. 57 is not that high, but across that many trials, the odds of a fluke were basically zero. That's why he thinks your mind isn't sealed inside your skull. That when you look at someone, a part of you reaches out and touches them, and they can feel the touch. Even though it sounded like magic, Sheldrake never dressed this up as anything magical. He argued it could have evolved like any other sense. If an animal could detect a predator's stare before seeing it, that animal might survive. It sounds strange, but it has the shape of a good evolutionary story, which is exactly why it's so easy to believe. So, case closed? We've got a scientifically proven sixth sense? Well, no, because 100,000 messy trials aren't worth one clean one. Quantity isn't proof. And here's the thing, people have been testing this exact claim for over a century, and one pattern keeps showing up. The tighter the controls, the more the effect shrinks or vanishes. Here's what I haven't told you about Sheldrake's experiments. In a lot of them, that random order of stares wasn't actually random. Think about a real coin toss. Flip it enough and you get long streaks, 5, 6 heads in a row. True randomness is streaky, but that feels wrong to us. So when people build a random list by hand, they smooth it out and over-alternate. Sheldrake's sequences had exactly that too tidy structure. And that's the trap. It's the same rhythm your brain falls into when it guesses. Now add one more detail. In a lot of these tests, you got told after each guess whether you were right. And without ever realizing it, your brain starts learning the pattern. Two researchers, Marks and Colwell, showed how much of that sixth sense could come from the pattern alone. Run it with a learnable list and feedback, and people score above chance, without feeling a thing. Their brains were cracking the code, not reading minds. Sheldrake pushed back. He pointed to trials of his own, cleaner ones, that he says still came out positive. So maybe the sequences aren't the whole story. But then comes the part that's much harder to wave away. A psychologist named Robert Baker ran Sheldrake's own test himself, but sealed off every loophole. No feedback, so there was no pattern to learn, and the starer stayed out of sight and earshot. No sound, no shadow, nothing to catch in the corner of your eye. Just you and the supposed sixth sense with nothing else to go on. His subject scored 50-50, pure chance. And here's the real tell. In the late 90s, researchers had a believer and a skeptic run the identical experiment. Same lab, same gear, same volunteers. When the believer ran it, a result. When the skeptic ran it, nothing. The only thing that changed was who was in the room. And that's the giveaway. A real effect doesn't care who runs the test. Gravity pulls the same whether a believer or a skeptic drops the ball. But this one only showed up for the person hoping to see it, which means the result wasn't coming from the person being stared at. It was leaking out of the experimenter itself. Tone, timing, scoring, tiny unconscious cues. Hope hard enough, and you can coax a result into being without ever meaning to. That's not a sixth sense. And this is the answer scientists have kept landing on from the very start. A Stanford lab got basically coin flip results back in 1913. And a century later, the sixth sense hypothesis still hasn't held up under tight controls or crossed into mainstream science. And there's no known signal that could physically carry a stare across a room. But hold on, if it's really just a coin flip, why is everyone so sure? Why do you have that vivid memory of turning around and catching someone in the act? The answer is simple, survivorship bias. You've probably heard the famous World War II bomber problem. Engineers wanted to armor the planes that limped home covered in bullet holes until someone realized the data they needed was on the planes and never came home at all. You do the same thing with stares. A psychologist named Edward Titchener spotted this trick all the way back in 1898. You turn around all day long. When someone happens to be looking, you remember it forever. When nobody is, you forget it by lunch. So That's it. No sixth sense, just survivorship bias. You can't actually feel someone stare, right? Well, no. Here's the strange part. The feeling itself is real. That prickle on the back of your neck, the pull that turns you around, you're not making it up. And that's the actual mystery. If it isn't a sixth sense, what is it? Why do you get that jolt at all? The answer isn't magic. It's that you're carrying one of the sharpest eye detectors on the planet. Scientists have a name for one piece of it, the stare in the crowd effect. Here's the idea. Picture a crowd of faces all looking away. Now, one turns and locks onto you. You'd spot it instantly. It pops. And they proved it with a twist. They flipped the whole thing around. They buried a single face looking away inside a crowd of faces all staring right at you. Now, finding the odd one out should be just as easy either way. Same puzzle. Flipped. But it wasn't. The face looking away got swallowed up in the crowd, while a single face staring at you always jumped straight out. Finding a starer is easy. Finding the one person not staring is hard. So your brain isn't just spotting whatever's different. It's specifically tuned to eyes pointed at you, and it gives them their own private fast lane. And it gets weirder. So far, this has all been about eyes. Faces, a gaze, someone's eyes locking onto yours. But a team of psychologists at Yale wondered, was it really the eyes doing this, or something more basic? So they stripped it all away. No faces, no eyes, just plain cones, simple pointed shapes scattered on a screen. Some pointed straight at you, some pointed off to the side, and they timed how fast people could pick them out. The cones aimed at you got found faster. Every single time. There was nothing alive in that experiment. No eyes, no face, just a shape pointing your way. And some deep part of the brain still flagged it. That one's aimed at me. Because your brain isn't only hunting for eyes, it's hunting for attention, for anything that seems pointed in your direction. And your brain is constantly doing this subconsciously. There's one famous case, a patient neuroscientists know only by his initials, TN. A stroke destroyed his visual cortex, the part of a brain that turns the signal from the eyes into a picture you're actually aware of. His eyes themselves still work fine. Light still pours in. He just doesn't understand what he's seeing. For all practical purposes, he's blind. So in 2013, researchers slid him into a brain scanner and showed him faces. A face making eye contact, and his amygdala lights up. A face looking away, and it stays dark. And before you think we've just proven the sixth sense after all, we haven't. The faces are right in front of him. The light from those eyes is landing on his retina, exactly like yours. He just can't consciously see it. The signal simply takes a back road, straight to the amygdala. And it matters that it's the amygdala, a deep brain structure involved in threat, emotion, and deciding what deserves your attention. Which means your brain doesn't treat someone's looking at me as a neutral little fact. It treats it as a possible threat, run by the oldest, fastest part of you, long before the thinking part even shows up. You were born with this. 2-day-old newborns already prefers a face that looks back at them. And you can't switch it off. Tell people the trick in advance and the pull toward a direct gaze gets stronger, not weaker. So here's what's really happening behind you. A face turns your way at the edge of your vision, or a chair creaks, and your eye detector fires. Attention on you, half a second before you know why. You turn. They're looking, and your brain writes the simplest story it can. I felt that. And notice which way the mistake runs. Your brain would rather assume you're being watched when you're not than miss it when you are, which makes complete sense given what our ancestors lived among. A false alarm costs you a second of awkwardness. Missing a real pair of eyes, a rival, a predator, could cost you everything. So the system is tuned to overfire. Better 100 false alarms than one fatal miss. It's the same logic as a smoke detector that shrieks at burnt toast. Annoying. Also exactly what you want. And if this is ringing a bell, it should. It's the very same alarm we talked about in another video of this channel. Why your brain still fears the dark. The same ancient wiring, different trigger. And here's the part I find beautiful. Of every animal, we might be the best on earth at this. Look closely at a human eye. There's a big patch of bright white around the color. Most animals don't have that. A chimp's eye is dark almost all the way across, which quietly hides where it's looking. Ours does the opposite. That white broadcasts your gaze clear across a room. Apes follow your head to see where you're looking. Human babies follow your eyes. Scientists think our eyes turned into little billboards on purpose, so we could read each other. Follow a glance, share a look, cooperate without a single word. Now, I'll be honest, that idea is debated. It turns out more animals have pale eyes than we used to think, so only humans have white eyes is probably too strong. But the heart of it holds. We are the animal that lives by reading eyes. So the next time the back of your neck goes tight, and you turn and someone is looking right at you, it's not sixth sense. Instead, there's a watchman in your brain that has been scanning the edges for eyes since long before you were born, asking the same quiet question all day long. Is anything looking at me? Most of the time the answer is nothing, but every so often it turns you around at exactly the right moment, and you meet someone's eyes, and two very old alarm systems across a crowded room recognize each other and go quiet. Maybe that's why being seen can feel so dangerous and so comforting, because a gaze can mean threat, but it can also mean recognition. Someone noticed you. Someone found you in the crowd.